Hello, chat. Hi. I'm bullying everybody. I'm doing it. I'm doing Fuck Off Friday over on TikTok right now. We're doing it. It's working, I think. I don't know. Do we have no mods? Are we a modless chat today? Wow. It's going to be extra chaotic over there today. No mods. How many people do we have over here? Do I have to keep being mean? Mod Free Friday. Fuck Off Friday. Welcome, first time chat. Cat's Out Curry. 118. Okay, we can do better than this. All right. Okay, listen here, you fucking losers. Listen here, you fucking losers. Get on over. There's 258 of you on here. Why aren't you over on Twitch? Why? Oh, I don't want to download it. I'm too lazy. That's embarrassing. You should be fucking embarrassing. Car, that's okay. You're allowed. Car's allowed. That's embarrassing. You should be embarrassed. You should be fucking embarrassed for that. Okay? So, you don't have Twitch? Download. It's a fucking app in the App Store. Can you not figure out how to work the App Store? Really? That's embarrassing. You need it more than anybody else if you can't figure that shit out. Right? On the way. Good. Less ding dong. Less ding dong by the minute. There's a Discord. Yeah, with links for shit you guys can read. That's what you can read. You can learn how to read things over on the Discord. Come on. Get over here, losers. Get on over there. All right. Tutorial on how to download Twitch. We're fucking cooked. We're cooked. Come on. All right, idiots. Chop. We don't have time, morons. Come on. It's Fuck Off Friday. We don't have time for your bullshit. On Wednesday, maybe. On a Monday, definitely. But not on Fuck Off Friday. On Fuck Off Friday, we got no time for this bullshit. Okay? Ash wants a tutorial on how to read. Ash is the only person who gets a tutorial on how to read. Ash, I will read with you all day long, Ash. Come on. How are we doing, everybody? What are we up to over there? What are we up to with Fuck Off Friday? Here, not a ding dong. Yay, Naya Beauty. 188. Well, it's not. You guys are still stupid. We need at least 12 more of you to stop being stupid. Because you don't even have TikTok and somehow you're here. You're doing great. I have to get my water. Hold on. I make money off Twitch? Yeah, fuck yeah I do. And you know what? That's not communist. And you would know that if you've ever read a fucking book. These people who have never read a fucking book are out here trying to tell you what communism is or isn't. Communism is when no get paid for work. Do you hear yourself? That's fucking embarrassing. Communism is no money for job. These people. You're stupid. Okay, you guys hold on a sec. I'm gonna go get water. I'm gonna bring these idiots with me. I'll be right back. Okay, hold on. Hey, I'm back. Now they're trying to tell me I've never had a job, so it's going really well. You fucking idiots. Yeah. I have a whole ass job as a clothing designer, and I still know more than you morons about politics. Because this is what I do in my free time. What's your excuse? What the fuck is your excuse? No time to read a book. Let's see how we're doing. 221's pretty good. That's pretty good, actually. We might be out of here. Okay. All right. You fucking morons who just make shit up and then act like that's the truth. This is your last chance to do over on Twitch for Fuck Off Friday. Okay? Get on over. Get on over for Fuck Off Friday. We're doing it. You contribute nothing of worth for your labor. You aren't a worker. Fucking bitch, I'm gonna throw capital at your fucking head. I'm gonna throw capital at your head. It's always these motherfuckers who don't know what Marxism is, or socialism is, or communism what it is, who want to tell you what it isn't. It's crazy. It's insane, these people. Clothing designers aren't the working class. Bitch, all of chapter 1 of Capital begs to differ. It is literally about clothing production. You fucking idiot. Okay, I'm about to be done. You fucking idiots. Engels? His family? Fabric mills? Actually, clothing designers should all be communists, if you think about it. That's like that's Marx's whole thing, is like clothing production. Right? They're Zionists. Okay. I'm done with you. You guys are boring now. I'm going to go over to Twitch. Come join us on Twitch. Fuck Off Friday was great. Thank you for letting me yell at you. It is hard to keep coming up with things to bully you about, but you guys make it easy somehow. So thank you for that. Thank you for giving me good fodder. So I'm going to hang up here. It's Madeline Pendleton over on Twitch. Love you all. Goodbye. No, it's Fuck Off Friday. I hate you all. Goodbye. Okay, hi. Walmart Juggler, are you backing it? Oh, potty training new old dog. That's so cute. Hi, guys. How is everybody today? Is everybody recovering from Theory Thursday yesterday? Oh, you're new. Okay. Quenched Cactus. It's Fuck Off Friday. So on Fridays, I just bully everybody on TikTok to try to get them to join our Twitch stream, and I'm really mean. And it's really fun, actually. You fell asleep 30 minutes in and missed all of it. That's okay. Chong the Beast, it's Theory Thursdays. It is what it is. I know. I'm in a pretty good mood. It's kind of fun, is the thing. It's kind of fun. Yeah, watch the VOD. It feels more complicated than it is, really. It really feels more complicated than it is. So I think when you get into it, it's not so bad. I do love the guy being like, you don't have a real job. Clothing design's not a real job. It's like bro, you didn't read the book. I could tell you didn't read the book, as a meme. Especially coming off of all of us being like, I never want to hear about a fucking jacket again after yesterday's Theory Thursday. So, okay, I do have a YouTube channel. I just export everything automatically to the YouTube channel, though. So it's not like I really keep up with it or anything, unfortunately. So you're not going to get, like, comments from me or anything. It's just, like, automatic exports. Oh, I do have a mic. Is the sound not good? It could be closer. Does it sound better? Let me make sure it's connected to it. Yeah, it's connected to it. Sounds good? Okay, sounds good. All right, yay. All right. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the stream today. Yay. For those of you who are new, we call this Double Down on the News. 4 days out of the week, we take a look at current events and news stories. And I just choked on air. And we discuss them from a left-wing political perspective, providing historical analysis when necessary, or left-wing analysis when maybe things aren't being presented so truthfully by the media. Now, I say 4 days a week. We're here 5 days a week. On Thursdays, we do Theory Thursdays. Today's Friday. You missed Theory Thursday yesterday. But you can see all of the video on demands here on Twitch. And also, I export all of this to YouTube now. My username on YouTube is the same as it is here. Madeline Pendleton. I have to cough again. So, over here we stick to current events when we talk about the news. If you want more deep dives just on history, you can check out my podcast. It's called Pick Me Up, I'm Scared. I do that with a co-host, my lovely friend David, who I've known since we were sophomores in high school, who is a doctorate in cultural studies, technically, but it's really like a philosophy. It's master's in philosophy, and they designed some special fancy fucking program for him at the school he got his doctorate in, just for him. So, if you want more of that analysis, we do that over there. And yeah, that's why we try to keep this to current. Now, the way this usually works is we take a look at a few articles and then we vote on which ones we want to talk about. But we don't, do we have Car in the chat today? We don't have Virgo. Do we have Car? Because if we don't have Car, we don't have a mod. Yes, you're here. Okay, can you maybe do a poll for us for what we want to talk about today? But it'll be in a few minutes. Yes, we have Car. We are not totally anarchists. Okay, yay. All right. So, does anybody have anything they want to submit? Yes, we'll do some Q&A first. So, in this portion, you can send articles, and I'll click them when I see links and open them for us to consider after. And we'll do some light Q&A as well. So, non-binary Catwoman asks, and I ask a question on China relations. My mother, Jamaican, tells me she feels like China takes work from Jamaican people. She prefers China to the U.S., but worries about Chinese taking jobs building highways instead of Jamaicans working on the new infrastructure. What would the defense of China be that I could tell her? Look, I think that this is a hard thing to do because the real solution is that Jamaica needs a workers' revolution, right? Every country needs a workers' revolution. And then this would be a thing that would be provided for, right? Because infrastructure projects are inherent to socialist economies. So I think the easiest way rhetorically, though, when you're talking to your mother is you're like, yeah, well, it would be cool if rather than having to apply for a job and all these things happening and having a foreign country come in and build infrastructure, Jamaica had a revolution and then they had a centrally planned economy and they were able to allocate jobs to rebuild all this infrastructure themselves. But because they're operating under capitalism in Jamaica, capitalism is not a very efficient system. It's an anarchy of the market, right? And that's why it's hard to put people in these types of positions and roles. So I think the solution for that is Jamaica should have a worker revolution and have their own socialist country, and then they could do this, right? That would be what I say. Okay, good morning, everybody. You missed Theory Thursday. It was chapter 1 of Capital to settle a score with Twitter communists who don't understand commodities. Okay. Yeah, infrastructure is low value for capitalists. Capitalists will not invest in infrastructure, and we see that happening in the United States, right? All of the infrastructure projects we really have here in the United States were developed during the New Deal, and that's the period of time where I say we microdosed socialism because we were in the Great Depression and the USSR was thriving. So we had Keynes come in. Keynesian economics overtook our regular free market economics and started, as I say, microdosing socialism, and part of that was giving people the right to work through infrastructure projects. So that's when a lot of the infrastructure in the United States was developed, but now we see that was over 100 years ago, or around 100 years ago, and it's all starting to collapse. A lot of those things had 75-year life expectancies, and we have not since reinvested in infrastructure projects to rebuild them. So I think that that's worth noting. Okay, any other questions? Keynes radical. I mean, Keynesian economics, I think, is really, really interesting. Oh, Theory Thursday critique on Ayn Rand would be interesting. I would rather have us get through things that we like before we start talking about things we don't like, but I do fucking hate Ayn Rand, so that would be fun. No, I haven't really talked too much about Arab socialism or Baathism, but I do think those are interesting topics. Would I discourage Marxists from becoming lawyers? No, I think that you can. I think the only jobs really that I would ever judge somebody for having under capitalism would be like you work for like a defense contractor or like a military contractor of some kind, or you are in the military, you are a police officer, you are working for the federal government in some capacity, like that. You know. A 5-hour doc. Oh, I can't learn from videos. I'm so sorry. Ironic that I do this, right? I can't learn from videos. I have to learn from reading. It's just something about it doesn't hit with me. Yes, the leftist defense contractor on Twitter. Have you guys seen this? It's crazy. She's like, yes, you can be a leftist and be a defense contractor. Like, what? It's not even like hard. I'm like, okay, no, not that one. No, you can't do that one. It's pretty wild. Let me see if I can find this before we get into our voting. We get a little treat of just a little gab sesh before we get into it too much. That's Hillary's entire campaign. That's the Democrats summed up, though, right? You're reading compared to the content of the music crew. Okay, yay, that's good. Yeah. And they're inventing rage bait our grandparents couldn't even dream of. so true. Okay, leftist defense contractor. I bet I can find it. Addison Raytheon. So this is her. Radar spacecraft systems engineer, Department of Defense, girly pop, defense Twitter's resident Midwest princess. This has to be rage bait, right? This like has to be funny. This can't be real. But everybody thought this was a troll account basically, but then she started saying things that made people think maybe it actually was real. So that's been the current controversy on Twitter. Everyone was like, this is a joke, right? But then she started saying things like, well, you can't even tell the difference between this and this and this. Do you really think that, like, you have a right to judge me on this? So then everybody was like, wait, I don't know. So this is the current discourse on Twitter is this real or not? Because everyone assumed no. But then everyone was like, oh, okay. No, I think she's getting it now. Leftist defense contractor is a Twitter character specifically designed to piss me off. Like, okay, the CIA really cooked with that one. I think that she's not real. But then some of the things I should have bought premium before I decided to step into the cesspool. I could be getting paid for all this. If only leftists organize nearly as well in real life as they do when they're telling people to kill themselves on the internet. She got a little victim-y in a way that we're like, wait. There was some tweets. There was one in particular where I was like, wait a minute. Is this chick for real, maybe? Okay. Let's see. My favorite thing about this account is people who think I'm somehow trying to explain away my job because it's morally bereft. I think my job does good things. My second favorite thing on this account is leftists who somehow don't know who Chappell Roan is and want me/her to die from the profile picture. Followed closely by, you should support Palestinian freedom from oppression, but not Ukrainian. It's either both or none, or you're an ideological arsler. Ding dong. I think she might just be an actual liberal. Like, this is why people are like, wait, are you for real and just a liberal? Hashtag not very woke of you, calling me stupid slur names. If you don't care about Ukraine, you're not a real leftist. Damn, this got people heated. True and correct, by the way. Yeah, so I actually think she's for real and she's just a liberal. Yeah. I like, this actually is, in many ways, like, this is literally a liberal. It's just so funny. Right? Like, it seems like it's either a very, very smart and funny fucking communist, or it's just your average liberal. And this is just what we've descended to. Like, DOD girly pop really is a persona now. I kind of feel like it could also be that she's like just kind of self-aware about it being funny, but is just a liberal. Like, maybe she's just kind of a funny liberal, so she's like morally bankrupt, but then like kind of like 2% self-aware about it, and that's what makes it hard to understand. But I'm not true. See, I care that Ukraine is a neo-Nazi regime that has no qualms about attacking all of its neighbors for the crime of not helping them enough. And then Addison Raytheon says, can someone beat this guy with hammers? Like, I think she's for real. Oh, here it is. At some point, you've got to realize that arguing about the morality of defense work with someone who thinks Patriot missiles blow up schools in Gaza is a losing game. So I don't know. And then she's just doing regular tweets that don't seem on brand. Drink that beer and blast Steely down loud as fuck tonight, white boy. I don't know. Okay. So, that's what's happening on Twitter for those of you who are too good to join us in the cesspool. I respect you for not being there. Couldn't be me. I'm down in the slop trenches. Oh, I'm down in the slop trenches. Right? That's why I had so many people who never read Capital asking me what exchange value, not even asking, being like, ha, you fucking fool. Exchange value doesn't have anything to do with commodity fetishism. I am very smart. I'm on Twitter. And I'm like, oh my fucking God. Why am I in the slop trenches? And it you know, it's because I'm a slopper too. That's where I belong. At the end of the day, you're only as good as the company you keep. That's what I'm saying. So those of you who are not on Twitter, you're better than me. You're better than me. I'm no better than these people. I'm no better than Addison Raytheon. I'm just a different brand of Twitter slopper. So if you missed Theory Thursday yesterday, where we went over everything having to do with suede and linen jackets in Chapter 1 of Capital Volume 1, the takeaway is, Almighty Pizza, you can fuck your suede jacket if you want. Yeah, you can. You can. It's not commodity fetishism. It's a secret third thing. But I'm cool with that, man. You know, I'm cool with that. Woke maxing means not kink shaming. Right. All right. So, does anybody have anything they want to talk about today in the news? Anybody see anything that interests them? Otherwise, I'm going to go into the mainstream news slap trench. It's a different kind of slap trench. And look up today's news, and I'm going to present us with 5 options. Iran or Cuba, okay. It's actually required to fuck your jacket now. Go buy one. Okay. You think an unpacked critique of conservative theory would be really useful? I took a class on conservative thought in undergrad. You know what? This actually could be useful because a lot of people really don't understand what fascism is, and I feel like I'm always trying to teach people about it. So that actually could be good for Theory Thursday, is we look at Benito Mussolini's fascism so we really understand what direction people are going in. Okay, we've got Russia's drones in Sweden. Yeah, we also learned yesterday that 40 packs of ramen equal 1 ring. That was so true. We learned that. All right. Okay. We're looking at Anthropic. We've got some of that. Pakistan and Afghanistan could be interesting. Let's see what else we have. I'm gathering options for us, chat. Cuba, okay. Kansas basically just said that if you're a transgender person with your correct gender on your ID, it's like no longer valid, and I think you have to send it back or they're sending you a new one with your fuck ass gender on it. So that's fucking weird. And just think about like all the resources that go into that. Like Kansas, I'm not trying to be a hater, but I don't really think you got money like that. I don't think you have reissue new IDs to all the transgender people in your state borders money, right? We don't know yet, Circito. We're still voting. I haven't fact checked this, but somebody said you had to pay to fix it. That's crazy. It's just like, EU's pursuing digital sovereignty, first time chat. They're dropping Visa MasterCard for payment processing. Oh, EU is pursuing sovereignty in general. Okay, so this is really interesting because you guys remember, obviously we were talking about the Jeffrey Sachs speech to the EU, or to the EU Parliament a couple weeks ago, and how he was like, you need to jump off of the United States ship fast. You need to abandon fucking ship fast. You need to start thinking about yourselves as the EU immediately. So this actually, from this first time chapter, The Last Iron Star, this is really, really interesting. I mean, this might tie into it. Now, it also would tie into what China talks about with their firewall, their great firewall to keep out American business. It plays into Nepal. We got a hype train incoming. What Nepal was doing when they wanted to basically foster their own internal internet business. North Korea with their intranet, they have their own Netflix, they have their own Uber Eats, they have their own Uber app. Like, and this kind of thing where you're not relying on American tech. Cuba. Oh, I know lots of folks saying Cuba, but touching on the topic of the U.S. using imperial influence to pressure Latin countries to end their Cuban medical program. That's pretty interesting as well. And then we have Bill Clinton Epstein House Oversight Committee deposition. Yes. Okay. Okay. All right. So I'm going to pull up. I'm sorry, I just saw this. Solar power's newest trends. MAGA influencers. Weird. All right. Weird. That's fine. Let's see if there's anything else interesting. All right. We're going to look at Iran updates. Cuba updates. Cuba, Iran. Okay, here's what I think are the options for today. Car, are you ready? When you confirm you're ready here, I will give you the options. Oh, this? It's like a lime crime one. It's really old. I don't know. It's like wet cherry lime crime something. I don't know. Car, yes. Okay, ready. All right. So let's say domestic, like USA, as one option. And let's say Iran as another option. Let's talk about Pakistan, Afghanistan as one option. EU as one. I don't really have any Cuba updates. I guess we could do Cuba. I do have some Cuba. We do have a little Cuba. Yeah. So those ones. That's 5. Oh, the Carl Bernstein CIA report on Rolling Stone. Yeah, I did. Okay. So Car's going to put together a poll for us. So just wait a second while Car gets the poll together. And then when the poll's up, you'll be able to see it at the top of the chat. And you can vote in the poll. And in the meantime, we'll yap a little. And I'll show you the Carl Bernstein article. Website expired. Oh my God. I was wondering when the Carl Bernstein website would go away. Whoa. Major. I'm going to do Wayback Machine. I'm going to update also my entry-level reading list to have that link. Okay, so the link is now updated on my entry-level reading list. And vote or Stalin will eat with a big spoon. Everybody vote. Vote unless you want to be victim of Stalin, Gulag, and eaten. That's a kink. Stalin ate me with a big spoon is definitely someone's... Young Stalin ate me with a big spoon is for sure someone's kink. For sure. Here's this one also. Kind of really into the eating me with a spoon thing. New Hawkeye and Devore. You're old enough now to know Stalin was never not hot. It is interesting when you reach that stage in your life, right? Where you're like, oh my God, these grown-ups are hot. Oh my God, I'm a grown-up. Whoa. And also they're bringing solar power to Cuba so the hospital can run. That's really, really good. Okay, yeah. Nice. Let's see, really fast. One second. Yeah, Code Pink is doing stuff out there. It's really, really good. A lot of socialist orgs are doing stuff. There's the Flotilla you can get on. There's a lot of activity going on to Cuba right now, which is really good. I love our community too. I think that we are the vanguard of Woke 2.0, really. Of Woke Maxing. I think we are. I really believe that for us. I think so. We're so close. Did everybody vote? Get your votes in. EU is winning. I kind of think the EU shit is really interesting. You know? I'm very interested in it. I get it. The domestic stuff, in case anybody wants more info on that, the United States shot down one of its own drones accidentally. There's some shit with AI going on. More of us shooting down our own drone. Bill Clinton on some fuck-ass Bill Clinton shit. So that's what's going on with the domestic stuff, if you haven't voted yet. Yeehaw woke. I think that's what the ACP was trying to do, but they just became yeehaw. Dangerous. Okay, EU1. All right, let's get into it, everybody. If we have time, we'll get into some of these other topics. What's the second place topic if we have time? It was Pakistan and Afghanistan. All right, so that'll be our second option. Now, I'm getting this ready. We're going to see if we have any other EU news to see if anything else might be relevant in here. Ooh, this is interesting. Okay, I'm going to look up one more place. We're going to pull some things up just so we have some options for what's going on in the EU. Okay, we're ready. Ooh! Something interesting about Hungary and Russia, too. Okay. All right, guys, let's talk about the news. So this article we have today is actually a little bit older. It's from last month, but it is talking about the digital sovereignty of Europe. Now, the reason why we thought this was interesting is because we were talking about this, like I said, a couple of weeks ago when we showed a little bit of the Jeffrey Sachs interview where Jeffrey Sachs, who was a political analyst and economic analyst who's worked with the United States under Democrats and Republicans, who was tasked with restructuring Ukraine's economy after the coup. Hi, Kenny, just got Twitch. Hello, welcome, Sammy. And then also was basically telling them you need to stop aligning yourself with the United States. The United States will abandon you. We were talking about that and looking at that kind of speech in the context of the United States coming for Greenland and really just the EU realizing that they only were off limits for the United States insofar as they were useful, and they have failed to be useful to us. So there is nothing really stopping the United States from treating EU countries the same way that we treat Latin America, that we treat Africa, that we have treated Asia, right? And I think that's really alarming for the EU countries to realize. So they are currently realizing this in real time, and I think they are panicking. And this is something, again, that Jeffrey Sachs had warned them about. Like, you should not trust the United States. It is dangerous to be an enemy of the United States, but it is far more dangerous to be a friend of the United States. Do not trust these people. And we talked about it Burn Book style. Do not trust this fugly bitch. Like, the United States is the fugly bitch. Do not trust us. We do not have your back, right? So, I think the reason why this story, even though it's a month old, is kind of interesting for us as a community, and probably why a lot of us voted on this, is because the recommendation from Jeffrey Sachs was for the EU to start to try to establish itself as a viable part of the multipolar power structure that's emerging now and come together as the EU specifically, not as individual countries, but as the EU, so they could flex their own kind of counterweight against the United States and China and Russia. And I think a lot of us are really interested to see if they do end up aligning more with China or Russia in lieu of the United States. But they are a little afraid of the United States and our unpredictability, right? So they are suddenly realizing that all the shit they were cool with us doing to other countries, we'll do to them. Like, we're not above it. They're not above it, certainly. So this story is Digital Sovereignty, Europe's Declaration of Independence, ? And we're going to download the PDF. As somebody said, the word PDF or the term PDF has been ruined for them because of Epstein, and I kind of agree. I'm like, every time I see it, I'm like, PDF. I do think it's really interesting, though, how TikTok consistently just demands new language, and we just adapt to it so effortlessly. Where does the UK stand here? I feel like the UK is still going to be our ally in all of this. But I do love that we're just like, oh, we can't say this word? Fine, I made up a new fucking word. Like, here's my word now. Deal with it. And we all, like, are just rolling with it in real time. We're like, yep, that's what that means. I get it. That's fine. It's very, very interesting. So this is from the Summit on European Digital Sovereignty. This is a 32-page document, so we have a lot, I'm sure, to learn here. So we're not going to read the whole thing because I did just torture you all with chapter 1 of Capital. And it's so funny because when I was doing it, I was like, this is so chill. This is going to be so chill. And then I went back and listened to 5 minutes of it this morning to be like, how did that go? And I'm like, this is very boring and not very fun. Okay. So I'm sorry if I was not interesting enough for the interludes of Capital to make it a little more fun for you guys. I should have done better. I could have done better. Oops. So I was more focused on trying to get through all the content, which we already talked about when we do that on Theory Thursday. It makes it a little less digestible. So something to keep in mind. Shorter is better for Theory Thursday. So yeah, I'll send you guys this document. We'll make a tiny URL. Hold please. No. Where are you? Where are you? The fuck? This one. Sorry, my tabs are all lost. Okay, I'm about to give you this. 3KHHDEXE. How can one ring equal 40 ramen not be interesting? Thank you, Rob. Uh-oh, I wasn't able to pin this. Oh, I'm not able to pin the link. So I just did the link, but it's not letting me pin it. So everybody see it there. See it there. How bad would it be as a Marxist to work for the EU? I mean, probably not fucking bad, right? I don't think it's bad to have influence in government as long as you're not making devices that kill people and sending devices to kill people, right? What were your assigned readings for your party? So, my party is more class focused. So, not like in the Marxist sense of class. I mean, like classroom focused. So we actually, rather than having a lot of assigned books you read on your own, we will have classes revolving around certain topics, and they'll give you like 3 recommended readings, usually 2 or 3 beforehand that you're supposed to read, and those are usually like an analysis, an overview of different texts that are relevant, but like the core sections to build a narrative. And then when you go into the class, you talk about things in more detail. Kind of like what we do here, really. And then you can read the text on your own after. But I think the way my party works is they're more interested in like, okay, say you're a mom and you don't have time to do a lot of reading. They want you to get the concepts. So they'll do their own writings that are like, here's this huge block of text from this author that's relevant. Just read this block of text and read this block of text. And like, here's the analysis and the summary. So one of the things I think my party does really, really well is synthesize data in a very easily digestible way. I think they're really, really good at like communication in general. And I think that is the strength of the party. So they're less likely to have recommended reading on the whole thing. But you also, when you join my party, you get a mentor, and the mentor will assign you reading individually for you based on where your knowledge is at and everything like that, if that makes sense, you know? So it's more, there's the structured things, which are more like classes with lesson plans, but not just like read this book on your own and come here, or we're just going to read one book altogether, like one big book club. It's definitely not book club vibes, but it is more classroom education vibes. I don't say which party I do for my non-electoral work, just because I don't want people to harass them. They're like real people. They're not like internet garbage. And they don't need to deal with our internet garbage bullshit. But for electoralism work, I do Peace and Freedom Party. They're a big tent socialist kind of group out here that a lot of socialist orgs use for their electoral work because they've secured ballot access. So they run Marxist-Leninist candidates on a Lenin model of electoral engagement. And I will tell you that right now, a big focus of my volunteer work lately, or my organization work, has been electoral work. So I'm volunteering with the Vote Socialist campaigns, which are the Marxist-Leninist campaigns. And it is wild. I was very, very adverse to electoralism for a long time. I was like, everything Lenin says about it, though, is correct. Like, the amount of the volume of conversation I can have with an average everyday person about socialist ideas, about socialist policy, just because I have, hold on, I'll show you real fast, actually. Sorry. Just because I knock on their door with one of these, this is like a magic ticket to talk to people about communism. And it's literally because the public loves electoralism, right? So once I hand them one of these, and I'm like, let's talk about these issues. All of these candidates, their platform is just Marxist-Leninism. But now all of a sudden, I can talk to people about Marxist-Leninism because I handed this and I attached 5 people's names to it that they can vote for. So everything that Lenin was talking about in should we participate in bourgeois parliaments and left-wing communism and infantile disorder, where he's like, look, we know electoralism is obsolete, but it's not obsolete to the masses. So you go where the masses are to talk to them about politics. He was correct. Like, this is really where the average Americans, especially, I don't know if you guys are in other countries, the average American's idea of politics starts and ends with an election. So Lenin was right. If you're not showing up during elections, you are missing an opportunity to teach people about socialism at a time when they are looking to be politically engaged. If they're voters, they want to be politically engaged in these key moments. And it really is wild to behold. And I have even, so Lenin in that text is like, we have seen that contrary to making people double down on these bourgeois systems of government, having Marxist-Leninists participate in electoralism can actually show people more the limitations of those systems and the need to build different and new systems instead. And I think it is correct. Because even sometimes you'll get someone who's smart and they'll be like, okay, cool, I like all this. But do you really think if we vote for these 5 people, all of a sudden they're going to be able to just do this? Our system won't let them do this. And when people say that, you're like, oh, you stumbled upon the secret, which is, no, they will not. We need to build all new systems. So do you want people in these roles telling the other people who aren't smart enough to get that yet, hey, everything's fine, just keep voting, babe? Or do you want people in those roles who go, hey, I really wanted to do these things for you, but I can't because the system won't let me because A, B, C, D, E, F, G. So we need a new system. Who do you want in those roles? Do you want the person who knows what you know and is telling people what you know and agrees with you? Or do you want the person who's lying to them and placating them because they get a check in their pocket at the end of the day? Which one do you want? And those people are like, and I'm like, right? That's why we do this. And it's not like we don't run to win. We run to win because think about how many people I can reach just by holding this. Now think about how many people, these people can reach by having a podium and a microphone in front of them and a title. And that's really why we do it, right? And the Bolsheviks did succeed. So, Lenin was cooking. Lenin was cooking when he talked about that. And the big challenge really to remember for electoralism is that you do not tail end the masses. And that's really just what you have to remember, right? We're not Democrats. We don't run as Democrats. We don't engage with the Democratic Party. We don't validate the Democratic Party. And we don't hide who we are, right? Our Marxist-Leninist governor candidate out here, Ramsey Robinson, is not going to tell you vote for me, all your problems are solved. Ramsey says you vote for me, and that's the start, but we all got to keep working together. We got to build new systems. We got to do these things. None of these people are going to lie about who they are and what they want and what they represent. They might use language that's more palatable to the masses. They might say socialism instead of communism. But again, they're not lying. They're never going to lie to you. And I think that's really important to remember, right? Oh, wasn't there going to be no... No. You know what, though? I was going to reschedule my delivery for today, and I didn't do it. I'm going to do that with you guys here. What the fuck? That's not my package. Hold on. I'm going to do that while we wait. I'm going to do this really fast. Talk amongst yourselves. Wait, this is a good question. On electoralism, what's the best way to explain these Marxist candidates are unable to make these changes as they are blocked systematically and differentiated from typical Democrat, my hands are tied? I think that's a really good question. I think that for Democrats, they're like, my hands are tied, vote for more Democrats. For Marxist-Leninists, it's, our hands are tied, we need a new system. And voting for more of us isn't gonna fix it. We can show, voting for us is gonna show you where in particular our hands are tied. It's also going to popularize socialism with the masses. It's going to make people understand and trust socialism, which is good. But, the difference is in the proposed solution from both of them, right? The Democrats are like, vote harder, babes. Vote harder. Maybe we go more right wing. Maybe we chase those Republicans. Maybe we fund ICE. A Marxist-Leninist is principled, right? We're principled. We're dedicated. We are not going to just change our minds or start pursuing or tailing other people. So we know that. So the proposed solution is not vote harder, babes. The proposed solution is, keep voting for us if you like what we're talking to you about and what we want to do. But we have to change these systems. And I think that's really the difference, right? Right. Okay, so hold on. I gotta see about this tracking number for this delivery at work. I got the tracking number from our manufacturer, but I think she gave me the wrong one. Because this one is from Nectar. Ugh, I wonder if they're still on Chinese New Year. I have to work. I'm working while live streaming. It's not good. Well, something from Nectar got delivered to somebody in Tampa, Florida, and that was the tracking number that I thought was going to be my delivery, but here we are for work. Oof, oof, oof. Okay. Yeah, just saying my hands are tied is a lot more understandable when Marxist-Leninists aren't being funded by the billionaires who don't want changes too. I mean, that's all, definitely true as well. Yeah, for the Democrats, their hands aren't tied. They just don't fucking want to, right? But also, I think it's the way you do it too. Like, when you have somebody who's like, my hands are tied and they're a Marxist-Leninist, they're like, my hands are tied by these people in these roles in this way and this law. Here is the new system we should build. So we were reading Stalin, and it's like, your new systems have to be built out of how you hold accountable the exploitative class of yesterday, right? That's what Stalin was really talking about when we did that Stalin text on Theory Thursday, and he was going through a lot of Lenin. And the idea was that you don't know what your new systems are going to look like until you develop them. And you're going to develop them specifically to hold accountable the exploitative ruling class of your capitalism that came before you. So it is actually in looking at the ways that our current system fails to hold them accountable and developing new systems that do hold them accountable. That is going to be the new apparatus of your worker government that takes over, right? And we're probably not going to get there from electoralism. I always say I'd love to be proven wrong, right? Just prove me wrong. Try voting in communism. What's the worst that's going to happen, right? I don't think it's going to work, but, fuck it. Go for it. Who cares? But whatever the case, those new systems, however you develop them, to hold accountable the people from the past who are not, those will be the foundations of your new government apparatus, as Stalin and Lenin both said. So I think that's very interesting. That will be your dictatorship of the proletariat. Yes, and as Human in the Myth says, the dictatorship of the proletariat is necessary to build a genuine state of the whole people, and that will be where the dictatorship of the proletariat starts to take on, government organs, right, and institutions, which I think is interesting. Vegan zoos where you can throw tomatoes at war profiteers. I'd go. Very, very interesting. Okay, so let's get into what's going on over here with the EU. Now, we have this lovely PDF. It is 32 pages long, and it is from the Summit on European Digital Sovereignty. So this originally, I guess, was from November 18th. We saw some articles about it from mid to late January coming out. People are still talking about this. What is this going to mean for, the new multipolar world, right, developing? So people are calling this Europe's Declaration of Independence, ? And I think Europe would be wise to stop hitching its apple cart, is that the phrase, to the United States, right? They should divest from American companies. That is completely true. I also think that the less centralized the capitalist power is, the more opportunity there will be for kind of worker revolutions, worker shifted new governments to emerge, things like that. So we have all sorts of this. Now, this is the thing I think is really interesting. Europe's missing Silicon Valley. And I think we should start here. So one of the things that we talk about in the United States when not we as Marxists, as principled, intelligent Marxists, but the masses, what they talk about when they talk about censorship and internet protection in places that are under Marxist-Leninist leadership, like the DPRK, like China, like what we saw Nepal trying to do, right, is they talk about it as though it's freedom of information, freedom of press, right, freedom of speech. Oh, they're censored. They don't have access to the same internet that we do. Their rights are being censored. Do you upset an apple cart? You hitch a wagon? I don't even know, Matsy. I don't understand that phrase. I know nothing about apples. I don't know about carts. I don't know about wagons. I have no idea how this works. Somebody needs to explain it to me. I really don't know. I think I might also be too autistic for these phrases, yeah. A card is worth 1,000 ramen packets. I think Weebcore got it. What's happening? They're making me drink water. Okay. So I think though we think about this in terms of censorship, like, oh my God, those poor people, they don't get access to American slop content on the internet. They're not free, right? Which is just like, I don't think they need it, babes. As long as people have existed, people have been able to slop some content. They can make their own slop content if they want. They don't need us. But what really is missing from the conversation is the internet as business, the internet as industry, the internet as a form of trade that also should be entitled to trade protectionism where it benefits your country, just like anything else. So just like your country might want to impose tariffs, right, on things that are being imported there to foster their own economic development and production, which is what theoretically was supposed to happen with Donald Trump imposing all those tariffs on China. We know that did not occur. American manufacturing did not suddenly bounce back. Shocker. The idea that you could do that for the internet is really missing from the minds of the average Westerner, certainly, because we view the internet not as a series of businesses that are designed to make money and bring industry, tech industry, right? We view it as media. We view it as freedom of speech. And the ultimate irony is that most Westerners know we don't actually have freedom of speech. Why do we all associate a PDF with pedophilia? Because we don't have freedom of speech. Because you can't just call somebody a pedophile. Because you can't just say that's a pedophile on our most popular social media app we use every day, TikTok, right? You have to come up with new language. So even insofar as we recognize that we actually do not use these tech company app products as tools of free speech, so we don't actually have free speech on them. We know if you have left-wing politics, your content's getting censored left and right. We still have somehow internalized the great capitalist myth that freedom and democracy means free markets and free press, even when you live in a system where your press is owned and operated by billionaires who are working hand in hand with the government to exploit and harm you, right? So how free can your press be when the Washington Post is owned by Jeff Bezos? How free can your internet be when you can't call somebody a pedophile who's a pedophile on TikTok? And these are really things that the average Westerner doesn't consider when talking about this, right? So when we hear, oh my God, China has the Great Firewall to keep out our technology, we think they're experiencing censorship. They don't have freedom of press. That is a fallacy twofold, right? First of all, it fails to acknowledge that we don't have free press. Why do they need our fuck-ass websites, right? That's just fucking bullshit propaganda anyway, right? And this actually plays into the Carl Bernstein piece about the CIA and the media, which maybe we actually can talk about in conjunction with us. Because we don't have free press. It's not like they're missing out on free press if they don't have access to American news sources. Because American news sources are not free press. It's billionaire press. It's rich guy press, right? Like, they're not missing anything, babes. And twofold, we fail to consider that the internet is the hub of tech industry, an industry that is massive and important, especially at this stage in development, for the development of these countries. So when China is like, we have the Great Firewall, it's twofold. Okay, fine. Maybe it keeps out American propaganda fuck-ass bullshit from our billionaire news sources saying, China bad, USA good, or whatever the fuck. But twofold, the second part is that it actually allows them to foster and develop their own tech companies. It allows them, instead of using Amazon, to create Alibaba. It allows them, instead of using Instagram, to create TikTok or their version of TikTok or whatever. It allows them to create their own tech industry. And that's what Nepal saw. Nepal was like, if we really want to foster economic development in our country that's not reliant on exports from capitalist countries, that right now includes tech. Tech is a major industry. We need to be developing our own tech. So just like China was like, we need to be doing manufacturing here, that MCM, money, commodity, money, right? Market system that has helped China really take off and thrive. Tech needs to be thought of as a commodity, right? As an industry that also needs to be protected, that you need to develop your own technology industry at home. So that's what North Korea's obviously done, the DPRK. They have an intranet. They've taken it one step further. They have their own streaming service. They have their own Uber. They have their own Postmates for food delivery. They've got it all. It's just North Korean companies. And I think, or businesses, right? And I think that's really important to think about in the context of what the EU is looking at right now. So when they talk about digital sovereignty, the EU has not done this. The EU is all in on our bullshit, right? They haven't really taken the time to do this and really protect themselves from a technology standpoint as an industry. And that's interesting because when you think about the EU also, only certain areas are technology hubs. I don't know if is Turkey in the EU? I want to know. No, so Turkey's not even in the EU. I was going to say Turkey is the place, on the continent where people do manufacturing now. That's the manufacturing hub. It's not even in the EU. So really, what is the economic stronghold of the EU then at that point? Turkey's in NATO. Okay, that makes sense. And that becomes the question. What is the EU economy? If the EU economy is not tied to the United States economy, what really do they have to stand on their own two legs and support themselves if they are no longer just viewed as a general part of the West in a major way? Right? They have some oil industry that's also based on imperialism. They have some things, but part of China's success is that it doubled down on manufacturing tangible goods, right? And the internet can be thought of as a tangible good, a tangible product, an app you download. That is a thing, right? That is not this imperialist idea that money magically becomes more money through a series of complex market maneuvers. That's what the United States economy is based on. So where does that leave us? Well, that leaves us with an AI bubble that's about to burst and being completely reliant on China to make all of our stuff. Right? And that's what protected China. So this is going to be interesting to see how these are all concepts we need to keep in mind when talking about digital sovereignty and what that means for Europe, for the EU. Right. So let's read this. Europe's missing Silicon Valley. While many non-European observers would say that the EU's regulatory power already gives it significant influence domestically and externally, the EU's sovereignty in the European digital arena is vulnerable at best. Despite its role as a regulatory superpower, Europe finds itself reliant on non-EU companies for many essential elements of the digital world. A European Parliament report estimates that the EU relies on non-EU countries for over 80% of digital products, services, infrastructure, and intellectual property. Now, kind of think about the DPRK on the flip side. 100% of their digital products, services, infrastructure, and intellectual property is from the DPRK. You look at China, it's probably that 80%, if I had to guess, is from China, right? So this is what we mean when we're like, oh, they're vulnerable. They don't have their own tech industry, really. This perception of dependency is at the heart of the EU push for digital sovereignty. The EU has failed to develop a tech sector with either the vibrancy of Silicon Valley or the growing capabilities of China's industry. In particular, Europe has not seen the emergence of world-leading new companies based on digital technologies. Indeed, while the U.S. industry has created 6 companies with a market capitalization of $1 trillion or more, the EU has created none. In 2021, 3 U.S. cloud companies supplied 65% of the EU cloud market, while EU headquarters companies had less than 16%. As a consequence, European consumers and businesses must rely on non-EU companies, mostly US and some Chinese enterprises, for basic digital services. Initially, this largely applied to software, social media, search engines, and a wide array of shopping services. More recently, the importance of cloud, encryption, and AI, along with the prospective emergence of super-fast quantum computing, has made Europeans realize that this dependence on others has significantly and potentially long-lasting effects on their own industries and economies, including those far beyond the tech sector. Of course, a few European companies, are exceptions to these trends. Nokia and Ericsson were already leaders in the cables and fiber optics that are key to connectivity. They became even stronger in the market as concerns rose about the security of Chinese components. It's some fuck-ass racist shit, okay. The Dutch company ASML has been a leader in the machines required to make the semiconductors that guide and manage so much of the digital world. SAP is the world's largest vendor of these enterprise resource planning softwares. But these European companies are not in the same league as their US equivalents in terms of market capitalization. For example, ASML has a market capitalization of $376 billion, while NVIDIA is at $4.3 trillion and Microsoft is at $3.8. One consequence of Europe's struggle in the digital marketplace has been the emergence of an EU-wide debate on competitiveness, as represented most prominently by the reports of former Italian Prime Minister Enrico Letta and former head of the EU Central Bank, Mario Draghi. Draghi specifically underlined the importance of Europe's failure to develop an innovative tech sector by noting the increasing productivity gap between the EU and the United States, with European labor productivity falling to 80% of US productivity. He concluded that this was mainly due to Europe's failure to capitalize on the first digital revolution led by the internet, both in terms of generating new tech companies and diffusing digital tech into the economy. Now, something really interesting is that the USSR in 1991, one of the reasons for its dismantling is that in the late 80s, their economy did slow. And remember, the USSR had been a tech powerhouse in the Stalin era, certainly. We the communists, right, won the space race. We beat the capitalists in that. But by the time we started to see more computer-oriented technology emerge, under Gorbachev, we weren't really keeping up. The communists weren't keeping up with the capitalist powers. And that actually became a major point for why the leaders of the USSR became corrupted by the ideas of U.S. capitalism and chose to basically dismantle it, which I think is significant and worth noting. So the EU is important to note that they are not dumb for being like, whoa, this is going to be a problem in the future. Based on this, do I think that the EU will fall within the century? You know, anything I could predict, who knows how good my speculation is, right? I don't trust in myself to be the best in speculative analysis. I can do the basic things most Marxists can do, right? I would say that probably one of two things will occur. The EU will come together with a strong European identity that will stave off collapse for a while, and they will move further into social democracy programs and try to build themselves up into something semi-robust, probably not on par with China or the United States, but enough to get them through to survive. Or we'll see a balkanization effect where people start to rebel against the EU, the idea of the strength of the EU, and think that their country can be stronger without it, and that will lead to maybe chaos that actually does make these situations more rife for worker revolutions to take place in them. First time chat, TTX Jizraz 67. I'ma come in your butt until you cry. Do you guys think this person's 12? I think that's like an 11-year-old maybe. Being a parent must be so weird. Because you just got like a little weird, like, a little child goblin running around your house who's new to words. I'm so sorry. I just like hacked it. I think that must be so awkward. You know what I think about a lot? Like if you're like a parent and then like you find your kids like cum rag for the first time, like holy shit, what a world that is. Yeah, definitely clip that. But then this is the equivalent of us, just random people on the internet, being this kid's parent and finding its cum rag for the first time in its room all crusty and shit. We got Jizrag's digital Jizrag. And they're just like, oh, kids are disgusting. Sorry, I just saw it. I'm like, oh man, having a kid must be so embarrassing. Oh, you parents out there, if you're a parent, you're a real one. You're doing the real work. I don't know how you do it. No, I can't deal with that. I'm not finding any little goblin's jizz rag ever. Single mother of 3. Theory Bra is holding it down. This is my take on kids. Kids deserve better than me. All right, they deserve better than what I can give them. Anybody who actually has kids and you're doing it, I am so impressed by you. Your 3-year-old tell you women are doctors and they have vulvas? I mean, that's actually pretty good. That's pretty impressive. That's pretty good. 9-year-old troll. Sorry, I just saw it and was like, this is awesome. I love the internet. You know what? You're right. I do. I have forks like a 3-year-old forever. So really, maybe I'm already doing it. Use tissue discharger in 19. Well, you got a 10-year-old. You're not ready for his teen years. Yeah. Hey, wait to the commie factory. What have you missed, chat? So much. A child wandered in here and used all the naughty words it just learned, and it caught me off guard because I was like, oh, being a kid is so embarrassing. And now all the parents are like, yep, we got to deal with these little things. So, it's interesting. But we're actually talking about the EU and digital sovereignty. So, I feel like back on topic, not on children being little goober goblins. Wild. Thank you for sharing this, Bisco Witch. We're talking about EU sovereignty. Now, I really just do think it's so interesting because one of the reasons in my head that might be connected to the EU failing to develop digital sovereignty is that messaging of the idea of the internet more as media than as tech, than as industry. When you think about the internet more as media, and you think about the history of the influence American media has had on the EU, on Europe before the EU even existed, it does make more sense in this capacity that they wouldn't feel particularly compelled to develop technology as a sector of their economy, right? Oh, sorry. So the reason I'm thinking is, okay, think about how Eastern Europe, we had Radio Free Europe, Radio Liberty, which were American CIA operations that completely dismantled and destroyed communism in a lot of those regions just through their subversion. So Europe has not really had a reason to be hostile to American media influence since that time, because American media influence helped give them the capitalist revolutions, right, that billionaires could profit off of there. So they really haven't had a reason to keep out American info. If anything, American media has helped make them rich, helped keep them rich. When we talk about Ukraine and its development as the breadbasket of Europe, it was American propaganda that started going into Ukraine, starting in 2004 definitely, but especially in 2010, that started luring them away from trade deals with Russia and more into wanting to do trade deals for natural gas and oil and things like that with not just the USA, but also the EU. So the United States has really spearheaded the propaganda and media campaigns throughout all of Eastern Europe and even some Asian countries for sure, the areas we call the Middle East, right? Like, West Asia. All of those places, our media influence in those countries has been monetarily profitable and beneficial for Europe. So why, if they're conceptualizing of the internet as media and not as a technology industry, right, an economic industry, they've had no reason not to rely on Western media. Western media has benefited them every step of the way. The US media has helped develop capitalism, has helped steer these places away from communism through our propagandizing, through our disinformation campaigns. So really starting to conceive of this as a sector of their economy rather than just messaging, I think is a big shift for Europe in particular that I think is super fascinating here. Now all of a sudden they're like, wait a minute, this isn't just newspapers, but fancy, right? This isn't just words that can help bring people closer to our goal of spreading capitalism. This is a form of capitalism in itself, and we are not tapping into it. This is an industry of capitalism that we are not tapping into. So I think that's super fascinating. OG Bunnyist, wow, you're so late. It's okay. We're actually just kind of started. We're only on page 2 of what we're talking about today. We're talking about the EU trying to get digital sovereignty and not rely on US and Chinese tech companies, and how late to the party they are on that. And what that means for maybe the EU trying to assert itself as its own superpower in the world outside of the United States and independent. So you're not that bad. So the competitiveness debate has also sought to identify the causes of Europe's lack of digital champions. Europe has a vibrant startup community, as demonstrated by the growing role of venture capital. But many of these innovative enterprises end up moving to the United States or elsewhere, while others fail to commercialize entirely. The most popular rationale for this failure to scale, cited by US and European analysts, including Draghi, is overregulation. So this is really interesting. So one of the things about social democracy that we talk about, and Europe is the social democracy place, right? They're not undoing capitalism. They love capitalism, but they do a nicer capitalism. A social democracy can stave off a worker rebellion a little longer than naked, bare, raw, cruel capitalism can. All capitalism is cruel, but you know, the really bad version, the American version of it, certainly. But what it can't do is continuously provide that quality of life that people in these social democratic countries associate with their enlightenment, with their progressiveness, as long as there are places that are less regulated, that are more naked and bare, that the industry will flee to, right? So that's a really interesting consideration. So social democracy cannot compete with the fuck you wild, wild west version of capitalism when it comes to business. And that is the contradiction of social democracy. is that you are still doing capitalism. So why would the businesses not just flee your fucking heavily regulated bullshit and go to the more wild, wild west, we can do whatever the fuck we want version of capitalism that exists somewhere else that's better for them? And in that, you're going to have to start making compromises and chip away at your social democracy. And the thing that social democracy really does well is bread and circuses for citizens, right? That is why the citizens in these countries think that they are living this enlightened kind of existence where they don't need socialism. They figured out how to do capitalism right. But the trade-off they got for existing in this state of subjugation to the owning class in places like Europe is the abundant nature of bread and the quality of their circuses, which are supposed to be higher due to these social safety nets that have been granted to them, the higher quality of life that they are supposedly able to achieve. Now, once you start not being able to compete with the more naked, raw, and horrible versions of capitalism, though, you start getting pressured to deregulate. You start chipping away at the bread and the circuses, and it's not sustainable because of that. Right. So social democracy in itself, that is its contradiction. That is the contradiction it cannot resolve. And we see that with, even the UK, a different area, not the EU, but the UK specifically, but also the EU as well, talking about maybe now they want to privatize health insurance. Maybe they don't want this public option for health insurance anymore. And we're starting to see a lot of people talking about how their countries in the EU or maybe even the UK, which previously was the EU, how there are a lot louder voices in the room wanting to move towards that more American version of capitalism. Yeah, until the bread runs out and the king's heads start rolling. Exactly. And this is what we see. Liberalism eating itself. Exactly. So this is why we see that the promise of social democracy, it's a Band-Aid on a wound, but you need surgery. You gotta cut the whole fucking leg off, man. It's going bad. And that's not able to offer it. They're only able to delay the inevitable, right? The UK Social Democrat, I would say in the past they had more social democratic policies, maybe, like the health insurance, whatever. But no, not as much as the EU, certainly. Yeah, but even them, they're like, well, maybe we should do things more the American way, I guess, I think the Nordic countries, that's what we think of as being like, the pinnacle of social democracy. But I do think that these places have more social safety nets than even the U.S. does. So even if they're not, explicitly social democrats or democracy like the UK, they still have more of those elements than we do. And a lot of that actually didn't even come from an ideological purity. We know a lot of it came just from their proximity to the USSR. They were close to communism. The theory behind communism is that when a place goes commie, everywhere around it sees it working and they go commie too. And then everyone around them sees it working and then they go commie too. And this was what was terrifying for the capitalists. So the proximity to the USSR is actually what pressured a lot of these European countries to develop large social safety nets, right? To compete with the USSR. And that's why the further away from the USSR you get, it feels like we have less social safety nets, which I think is interesting. UK or USA. The Nordic countries are still monarchy. They're not super progressive, but they were afraid of communism, so they started introducing these social safety nets. Ayashike, social democracy, welfare capitalists that exploit the global south to continue existing. Exactly. And we see here, though, their primary contradiction is even with all of that, their business is just not going to develop if the business can thrive somewhere else with less regulation. So that's what we're talking about here when we say the most popular rationale for the failure to scale is overregulation in the EU comparative to the United States. Other suggested reasons include a chronic lack of indigenous capital, overly strict bankruptcy laws, and a culture that fears failure. Whatever the reason, Europe's inability to provide the resources and capabilities for its innovative companies to become continental champions, let alone world teachers, means it must rely on companies from elsewhere. This was already the case in 2018 when the GDPR, the first major piece of EU digital legislation, came into force. During the next 5 years of von der Leyen's term as Commission President, the EU passed several other pieces of digital legislation, most notably the DSA, DMA, and AIA. These measures made progress in harmonizing diverse member state laws, both existing and anticipated. But while EU leaders saw this body of legislation as protecting their citizens from the excess of data collection and illegal social media content, many outside the EU, especially in the US tech community, viewed these laws as overly burdensome at best and discriminatory at worst. Some EU policymakers, such as members of the European Parliament, Andreas Schwab, early on were open about their desire to counter the dominance of U.S. firms. Others, however, saw Europe as offering a positive alternative to the lightly regulated environment tech companies faced elsewhere. EU rules inevitably had the most impact on U.S. companies, which provided the overwhelming majority of digital services in the EU market. Chinese companies also came to feel the impact of EU regulations as their market share grew over time, especially in shopping and social media. Throughout this period of intense legislative activity, there were clear voices calling for greater digital sovereignty in Europe. The body of legislation passed in the first von der Leyen Commission can certainly be viewed as an effort to place limits on the U.S. companies that dominate Europe's digital space, and as a way for Europe to regain some control or sovereignty over that market. But as competitiveness emerged as a top EU priority in 2023, the discussion about digital sovereignty became part of a much broader discussion about innovation and economic security. Okay, so very, very interesting what's going on here. And again, this is why these countries now, when you look at them, China's Great Firewall, when you really do come to understand it in the context of this as tech industry, it makes so much more sense. It's not about censorship, maybe a little bit about keeping out the bullshit, sure. But again, it's more about fostering this very, very important industry for the growth and development of their country, for their economy. Yeah, basically, TLDR, as Rob669 says, EU's got to start making some apps. They need apps. Give them apps. China was 20 years ahead of us in foresight. I mean, they truly were. And that's the power of planning, right? That is the power of planning. So geopolitics and the rise of tech sovereignty. The earliest indication of a geopolitical element to EU digital sovereignty came during the first Trump administration when the United States protested the use of, I can never pronounce this company, Huawei? Is it Huawei? The tech company? This is going to be interesting. The Chinese tech company that basically was made illegal in the US because it was too good? Huawei. Okay. So, Huawei. Okay. Of Huawei components in European digital networks. Reluctantly at first, Europeans came to understand the risk of a Chinese capability to disrupt those networks and develop the EU toolbox for 5G security, a list of best practices released in January 2020. The toolbox identified states and state-backed actors as the most serious threats and also set out criteria for identifying trusted versus untrusted vendors, including closeness to a foreign government, lack of a democratic accountability in that government, lack of data protection agreement with the EU, and ability of 1/3 of the country to exercise pressure on the EU. Okay, so, and really this is funny. Lack of democratic accountability within that government. They're just talking about China. They're like, we just basically developed an anti-China law, right? Oh, your husband had one of these phones and then had to buy a new one when he immigrated? That's such a bummer. Oh my gosh. And everybody says it's like the best technology, right? Let's take a second. Let's take a little Huawei tech break. I just want to see. I just want to see. Hold on. Oops, history. Sorry, I'm trying to like organize all of our stuff for the rest of the day. I'm on the website. Consumer products. But like you can't buy this stuff in the United States at all, right? This is like not allowed. Free the market. Give us the Chinese phones. New aesthetic trends. Oh yeah, and they have the folding screens, right? So nice. That's so cool. And then you can buy jellyfish from them. They make their own jellyfish. That's nice. True display. It's so cool. I mean, it's amazing, right? Oh, gifted. Yay. Wow. Thank you so much. Wow. So many. 100? Oh my God. Yay. Thank you. What's up? We have such a good gifting of subs community. Wow. Thank you. Yay. So nice. Open presents, gifted subs. Oh yeah, open presents. That's the thing. Yeah. Yay, thanks. Open presents is a big gifter. Yeah. Yay, thank you. So nice. Okay, so getting back into what we're talking about here. Yeah, thank you, everybody. Thank you. Comrade Open Presence. Exactly. Comrade Open Presence. That's who we got here in the chat. It's so nice. So reluctantly at first, Europeans came to understand the risk of a Chinese capability. We talked about this, and then we talked about how the lack of democratic accountability in that government was a factor. But again, we know when we talk about democracy, the capitalists just mean communism. China's very, very democratic, right? First time chat, hi, Jason Society. So we know China's very, very democratic. So they just mean not capitalist. The toolbox was the first real effort to identify foreign companies and governments that might threaten Europe's digital sovereignty and those that might not. There was clearly a focus on China and Chinese companies, right? As demonstrated by the criteria for vendors, right? Like we talked about. But it should be noted that the toolbox is primarily voluntary guidance developed by the member states for themselves, with progress tracked by regular EU Commission reporting. In 2019, the EU identified China as both an economic competitor and a systemic rival, but initially with little consequence, especially in terms of economic relations. And this is, again, they're not really thinking of technology as an industry like they should. They still have that old school mindset that, like, technology, internet, it's like media, right? Over the next few years, the EU would increasingly focus on China and the dangers posed by its investments in the European economy, especially in critical European infrastructure. By March 2023, when von der Leyen called for de-risking Europe from China, Commission officials had identified a number of EU dependencies on China, including in critical raw materials, solar panels, and batteries that had the power to disrupt the European industry. In June of 2023, the Commission reported that it considered Huawei and ZTE materially higher risks than other fifth-generation suppliers. So you think about this. The United States makes Huawei illegal, right? So much for our free market fucking gods, right? And that's just viewed as protecting your industry. China sets up the Great Firewall. That's censorship. So there's, the way that technology can be interpreted twofold, the way internet can be interpreted twofold to be industry or media is very conveniently used rhetorically by political powers as well. Which I think is just important to note. See how they do it. See when tech is presented as media access and free speech issues, therefore, versus when it's presented as an industry that's fair to be protected and right to be protected. Yeah, we have double standards, exactly. And we can conveniently apply them whatever direction we want, whenever. The EU also initiated a few measures to address those vulnerabilities, heightened screening of inward foreign investment, primarily at the member state level, enactment of the European Chips Act, which provided funding for advanced semiconductor manufacturing in Europe, adoption of the Critical Raw Materials Act, which established goals for EU production of key materials, and passage of the Net Zero Industry Act, which sought to build EU manufacturing capacity in clean technologies such as solar, batteries, and hydrogen. While these measures were not aimed only at China, concerns about that country's ambitious global plans were a main motivation. Moreover, they had the effect of broadening the initially limited discussion of digital sovereignty beyond the realm of digital governance to include both digital and green technologies, resulting in a broader focus on technological sovereignty. This European debate regarding the geopolitical dimensions of sovereignty, both digital and tech, intensified significantly following the Russian invasion of Ukraine in February 2022. Along with a focus on territorial security, as seen in the increased defense spending of most EU member states, the EU realized that it needed to address other vulnerabilities. Most urgently, the invasion led to a swift and drastic shift in Europe's energy supply, as Russia went from providing 45% of Europe's oil and gas in 2021 to 19% in 2024. Now, something that's really interesting, I think I told you guys this, I had my washing machine repaired a couple months ago, and the guy who came to repair my washing machine was Ukrainian, and he was probably like 50, 60, something like that. I don't know, he was older than that. But I was talking to him, and he had lived in the USSR, and he was like, oh yeah, he's not an ideologue, most people aren't. He was just like, yeah, I liked it, our houses were free, that was cool, that was pretty nice, and then we went capitalist, and then, me and my brother started a business, and that was kind of cool. We got a little more, and everything was going fine in Ukraine, and then the coup happened, right, in 2014. So then he's like, then things got real weird in Ukraine. Ooh, after the coup, where's my plug? I didn't plug it in. Eee. we're back. And then he's like, so things got real weird after the coup, so I moved to Russia. I moved to Moscow. And then he's like, everything was fine in Moscow, and my brother and I started a new business. There was imports and exports in Moscow. We were importing and exporting things. But then the thing happened with Crimea. And then, okay, so then people start putting sanctions on Russia. All right, I'm doing imports and exports. That takes out half my business. I can still do the other half. But then he says the thing that ultimately was like made it unbearable to live in Russia is that Russia just started sanctioning everybody back and was like, fuck you then. We do it to you too. Whatever. And I did not know about that part. And he was like, well, but then my business is imports and exports. So now you're telling me I can't do imports or exports. This is just fucking ridiculous. So then he moved to the United States and he's like, and now I repair washing machines. And I'm like, okay, you've been on like a wild ride. This man's life in the transition from the stability of communism, right, to the chaos of capitalism, from Ukraine to Russia, it was just so fascinating. But when we look over here at this, we talk about how Russia went from providing 45% of Europe's oil and gas in 2021 to 19% in 2024. That's because of this whole like sanctioned trade war they started developing with each other over Ukraine in particular, which I think is really interesting, you know? And it's also worth noting that Ukraine and Russia, the whole reason really for what's going on over there had to do with oil and natural gas deals to begin with, because the United States wanted to open up Ukraine for business with the West, with the EU, and with the United States rather than with Russia. So what actually kicked off basically the civil conflict that led to the coup at the end of 2013, the beginning of 2014, was this one deal, I believe over natural gas, but it was a trade deal. And part of the country wanted to do that trade deal with the West and move more westward. And another part of the country wanted to do it with Russia. And the president at the time did not know how to split the difference between what these people wanted, chose Russia because it was the neighbor country and it felt like it made the most sense. And then the people rose up and a bunch of weird Nazis joined in the fighting and then they overthrew the government. So that also had to do with energy supply, oil and gas at the end of the day. And that was a big driver of the conflict and how it even started. And from there, obviously, we know that the ethnic cleansing started. The attack on ethnic Russians started within the Ukrainian borders. They started looking more towards NATO growth and NATO expansion. And then Russia was like, hey, these NATO missiles are fucking weird. And then the Crimea annexation happened because of the treatment of the ethnic Russians there. And then the conflict grew over NATO. And then, boom, next thing you know, you're in a war. So all of this ties into what we're talking about here with the energy supply. This isn't just like coming out of nowhere, right? This started with contract negotiations over energy supply back in 2013 between Russia and Ukraine and the United States and the EU. And so that's just important context to have all of that, which I think is really, really interesting. So the digital arena, they say, that was also vulnerable. Russian cyber attacks and apparent sabotage against undersea cables demonstrated the dangers facing Europe's digital infrastructure, while Russian origin disinformation flooded European social media. But again, no talk about American origin disinformation flooding everyone's media. This whole situation started because in 2010, the United States started aggressively funding propaganda and disinformation in Ukraine through the National Endowment for Democracy. From 2010 to even 2014, even while the coup was going on, we had massive amounts of disinformation. So, you know, Europe is they're still on their anti-Russia shit too. And this is the thing Jeffrey Sachs actually warned them against. Remember that thing that we took a look at, his speech to the EU. You need to stop being Russophobic. You need to stop being afraid of Russia. That's an America thing. That is not going to help you. Russia is actually way more reasonable than you're giving them credit for. You need to stop this shit. Your real enemy is the United States. And that's what Jeffrey Sachs tried to warn them about on the speech he gave to Parliament, because he's a person who's worked with the United States government for so long, because he was tasked with building the new economic system in Ukraine after the conflict. And I think that is just a very, very fascinating speech to watch because it contextualizes so much of this. Yes, this is a PDF pedophile that pretends that Russia sabotaged the pipeline. I think that they're maybe talking about underseas, not the oil pipeline though in this. Liberals' entire position is Russia has no reasonable demands. And really, when you look at it, regardless of your politics, It's very obvious Russia was pretty reasonable in the situation, right? They were like, we don't like NATO missiles surrounding us and pointed at our capital. Who fucking would? What if you let us into NATO so we don't feel threatened by it? What if you create a new tier of NATO where the countries bordering us, right, don't keep missiles there, but they still have the Mutual Defense Pact? We said no, we said no, we said no. All of these things that happened. Wasn't Tucker Carlson trying to convince the Trump regime to become friends with Russia? I don't remember, but I will say, there is a contingency that we talked about this the other day before yesterday, I think. There's a contingency of right-wingers who are very anti-war. They tend to be more of the libertarian faction. They just think it's kind of a waste of money. And they are very fascinating because they will tend to favor more having diplomatic ties with Russia rather than aggression. They will tend to favor more things like not going to war with Iran, these types of things. I think it also stems a little bit from that old school Henry Kissinger style realpolitik. Don't start wars you're not already in. Maintain wars you are in and win them. And that really feels like the Henry Kissinger doctrine of politics. So if you're not already in a conflict with somebody, fucking don't start one. Just keep the status quo going. The status quo is manageable. So if you're not already at war with Russia, don't go pissing off Russia. It's just going to create unforeseen circumstances that are going to make it harder for you to plan around. And we all know, obviously, Henry Kissinger is not a good guy. He's the fucking devil, right? That's why he maintained so many horrible wars that slaughtered millions and millions and millions of people. But I think there is a brand of conservative that still has that kind of mindset. We don't need to get started in this whole thing. And I think that those are the brands of conservative that are more interested in developing diplomatic negotiations with Russia. And ultimately, the irony is that Russia is not, they're not irrational. They would love that. They would probably love to have a seat at the table and to be able to negotiate with us and talk with us. That's all they probably ever wanted, realistically speaking. But as Jeffrey Sachs said, the United States employs game theory, which basically says don't talk to your opponent; they won't talk to you. So we've never given them that. So I think that the negotiations over Ukraine is actually the first kind of step that Russia has had seriously in a long time to negotiate about anything. And I think they're really probably milking it, and we're going to see a lot more come out of that that's not on the books and stated, and not just about Ukraine as a result of these conversations. It's their John Birch faction. Yeah. Kissinger of death. Yeah. Even outside of the NATO context, Ukrainian Nazis were killing ethnic Russians in eastern Ukraine before 2021. Yes, they were. 2014, 2015, 2016. I mean, it was an ongoing issue. It was a major issue. I thought in game theory the most favorable outcome was cooperation. Okay, Marxist Gamer Zero, I'm not going to lie to you. I'm not familiar with game theory. I just remember Jeffrey Sachs saying the United States is doing game theory, but then explaining what I just told you, where they will not talk to their opponent once they deem them hostile or whatever. So I'm not actually familiar with game theory outside of that one sentence Jeffrey Sachs said where he referenced it. But whatever it is, Jeffrey Sachs' position was that the United States just assumes Russia is hostile, so they won't talk to them. So I'm not sure if that fits into what game theory actually is. I don't really know much about game theory outside of that. Game theory equals zero-sum game. Okay. We don't negotiate with terrorists. Okay. All right. Thank you, guys. Yeah, that's not... I'm like, You saw Zelensky post in support of the U.S. invasion of Iran. That makes sense. All right, so perhaps the most important consequence of the Russian invasion, however, was the realization that Europe was vulnerable and that preserving its sovereignty, digital and otherwise, would require concrete actions. Many of the green technology initiatives mentioned above were still in the legislative process when the invasion began, but moved to enactment by mid-2023 as the Commission's term began to close and as Europeans became even more conscious of those vulnerabilities. Now, I will say, this whole thing, realization that Europe was vulnerable, these are choices Europe made. This self-infantilizing victimization Europe thing that's going on is very, very fucking weird. They were advised to not side with the United States on this issue. They did not take that advice. They actively pursued also luring Ukraine away from Russia, creating conflict in the region and creating conflict with Russia that ultimately led to them having these issues with their oil and gas supplies with them. Shit was chill until the EU joined in trying to make significant changes in Ukraine for financial profit. So it's really weird that they're like, we were vulnerable. No, bitch, you started a fight and didn't realize you couldn't win it. And it's just very, very weird. Trotsky argued the people of Ukraine had a legitimate national identity and the right to... Oh, Trotsky Banderite confirmed. It was only a matter of time before we learned Trotsky was just a Nazi all along. Didn't he, like, work with the Nazis, too? He, like, reached out to Nazis and fuck out shit like that, right? So many of the green technology initiatives mentioned were still in the legislative process, as we said. Competitiveness, resilience, sovereignty became linked together in the concept of economic security as the EU sought to reduce its external dependencies, especially on Russia and China. By the end of 2024, the tech sovereignty impulse in Europe had become a key policy priority, as demonstrated by the appointment of Hanna Virkunen to the new position of EU Executive Vice President for Tech Sovereignty, Security and Democracy. But before the second von der Leyen Commission could get its program underway or make progress in implementing the Draghi report, Trump's re-election as U.S. President pushed the impulse towards European digital sovereignty into hyperdrive. Toby Torbolobi's here! Talking about Trotsky. Okay, so this kind of section is a little less interesting to me. We don't have a ton of time left necessarily. Trump's action spurred renewed calls for greater independence. We get it. They want more independence. Yes. They've got some tech initiatives that they're undertaking. Now, this might be interesting. The Snowden revelations and the kill switch. This kind of feels interesting to me. Let's read this section. Yeah, I think Toby started off as MAGA, but we made him a Trotskyist. So I feel like we can fix him. I think by the end we can make him a Maoist. Because I think he wants to be in opposition to me in some way, and that's important to him. So we can't make him a Marxist-Leninist, but we probably could make him a Maoist, and that's my goal. Yeah, Toby's a Trot now, but Toby used to be MAGA. You were never MAGA? You definitely weren't a Trot in the beginning. What'd you start as? Libertarian? Maybe you were Libertarian. I like Toby, though. Toby's allowed. He has lore here. We like him. Toby Tony. You were liberal. Oh, okay. You're coming around. Yeah. We like you, actually. You're our favorite. You're not even a troll, really, anymore. You're just like a beloved member of the community. You know, you're like a weird cousin. We like you. We talk about you when you're not here. You know what? MLs do hate each other, Malrish. He could be an ML. Yeah, he can be fat. We like him. He'll get there. I think he'll get there. I also support Tony's progress, yes. So, more than a decade has passed since the Snowden revelations, but the topic continues to shadow transatlantic digital relations. Many in Europe hailed Snowden as a hero for revealing Europe's vulnerability to U.S. signals intelligence, and the EU Parliament invited him to appear and speak at a plenary meeting. The Barack Obama administration, which charged Snowden under the Espionage Act, objected vehemently to the invitation, and in the end, Snowden addressed the Parliament only by video link. Now, however, U.S. domestic sentiment regarding Snowden's actions has begun to shift, at least in Republican circles, as several of Trump's advisors have called for him to be pardoned. Snowden's disclosure started a chain of legal proceedings in Europe that generated substantial uncertainty among companies about the legality of their indispensable transfers of personal data to the United States. The Court of Justice of the EU, which is the CJEU, twice invalidated EU-US international transfer arrangements, judging them insufficient to protect Europeans' fundamental rights. Oop, hydrating. Forever Revolution is the primary contradiction between Trotskyists and Marxist-Leninists. Communism, we believe you can do communism in one country and that's preferable, and that you will get to a global revolution. Trotskyists do not. I sometimes call it Forever Revolution, if I'm being honest. Tiniest boop, I get it all mixed up. I'm like, yeah, that thing. Yeah, that one, where you just keep going with it. Okay. In 2015, the court struck down the EU-US Safe Harbor Framework, and a successor arrangement, the Privacy Shield, met the same fate in 2020. Meta, the object of the litigation both times, took the issue seriously enough that it publicly conceded to U.S. securities regulators that it might need to withdraw Facebook and Instagram from Europe if it could not legally transfer data to the United States. Very, very interesting. Okay, so this is a little less interesting to me now as we go on. You got European servers, the U.S. U-turn on data flows. Okay. I want to see, all right, we're getting towards the end here. I think that this conclusion is what we'll kind of go with. And then from here, I want to take a second to also talk about technology as media, as well. The internet as media. So I think we'll kind of pivot to that for the last however long of this kind of session today, streaming session today, because I think it just is an interesting consideration and it's a little fun. Yeah, I think that we can make Tony a Maoist for sure. I think Tony's almost there. So basically what they're saying here is that to what degree does sovereignty require autarky? I'm just realizing I've never said this word out loud. I've only ever read it. Or does the EU require partnerships despite the risk of dependencies because of the current lack of key capabilities? Some in Europe have argued that the right way to move forward is to develop end-to-end EU capabilities in the form of a Eurostack, from fiber optics networks and computing hardware to software development and cybersecurity capabilities, all would be provided by EU companies. Now, if they did that, though, imagine this is what we would critique the DPRK for doing, China for doing, Nepal for doing. Like, how dare they try to develop this independence? So very, very fascinating, the double standards at play here. And it'll be interesting to see if that's ultimately the path that the EU chooses to take. How sovereign do they want to become, and how much of a threat will that be to the American tech industry, right? Who's doing significant amount of business in Europe. So I think this is really fascinating. Now, in regards to like turning this around to talk about, this is a thing that communist-led countries have done well, right? This is a thing that they have foreseen as being an industry issue, and they have protected themselves against. But one of the benefits of having digital sovereignty and developing your own apps and developing your own technology in general, developing your own servers, that means you get to develop your own legislation about what kinds of things are being shown, what kind of information is being shared, your own privacy laws. All of this is obviously positive, right? So what this also allows you to do, though, is it allows you to do some form of media censorship that's beneficial to you. And I think that, look, all media is censored. The idea that the West does not have media censorship is, that the United States does not have media censorship is a joke, as we talked about, right? Our media is heavily censored, and we know that. But I did think because of that, and because, I'm going to do it in just a sec, I do think that because of the tie-ins with media and technology and how so many tech companies are also media companies, it could be nice for us to talk about a little bit of the CIA and the media, because somebody brought it up earlier, it's fresh on my mind, and it does kind of play into this. So this is going to be our little treat, a little end-of-day treat here. We're going to take a look at Carl Bernstein's The CIA and the Media. Just for a reminder, basically, that when these companies develop digital sovereignty, they also are developing the ability to help control the narrative against Western narrative interests. And the American narrative is heavily controlled. We are heavily propagandized. And this might be from 1977, but think about, as we look at this, how this ties into our access to media today. Think about how this ties into censorship on TikTok. Think about how this ties into Oracle, which was basically started by the CIA, started in conjunction with the CIA, at one point was said to be so much basically a part of the CIA that they were granted security access and security clearance to things. Now they own TikTok, one of our biggest social media apps. Since the purchase, I can tell you, my content is getting messed with ridiculously. My videos are ineligible for recommendation on For You pages. My audio is removed. I had the audio on a video that I talked about Oracle. I'm buying TikTok, just the sound was just taken off. My videos are spontaneously removed now, just taken down without notice. Half of my comments don't appear. I have to screenshot them and then post them as images. All of this stuff that started changing since the CIA-affiliated Oracle purchased TikTok. So TikTok is obviously a tech company, and they were a big, big threat. Their success was a huge threat to the United States. And that is why the United States came in with this deal that was like, it has to be purchased by an American company. Well, the American company turns out to be heavily affiliated with the CIA. So when we look at Carl Bernstein's piece from 1977, the CIA and the media, we can easily contextualize this in the landscape of the CIA and the media today. We have exposure to this. Is there any other app where you post short form content? I mean, on YouTube, I automatically export all of my TikToks to go on my YouTube, but they can only be 3 minutes or under, so my longer ones don't show up there. So, You think more because of automation and my videos getting spam reported by haters? That's possible, but that was happening certainly in the week before the sale too, right? So I don't know. And I did notice a huge shift. The biggest shift was the videos just randomly disappearing, for sure. And now the buffering issues, but that happens to everybody. That's a technology issue. Our tech is shittier. So now when you first post a video, it has buffering issues for like 40 minutes or something after you post it. So I don't know. Okay. So let's take a look at the CIA and the media. And just remember, this is still happening today, but it's happening with online media, tech companies. And remember, when we talk about digital sovereignty and technology, it is a twofold thing. And it is both media access and censorship and language, but also technology. And these things are merged together. And I think both of these things are important to have in this conversation about what it means to have digital sovereignty. Does digital sovereignty include keeping U.S. propaganda out of your country? I would argue yes, it does. I would argue definitely. That is a part of it. And I think both of these things are equally important. And that is what China's Great Firewall is all about. And then let me see if the USAGM website's still up. No, it still exists. Okay. For those of you who don't know, this is official website of the U.S. government, the U.S. Agency for Global Media. This is our propaganda network. Most Americans don't even know this exists. This is our propaganda network. It used to be the Broadcasting Board of Governors. And it has multiple entities under it, right? Voice of America, Radio Free Europe, Radio Liberty. What is OCB again? Is this which one is this one? Office of Cuba Broadcasting. That's Radio and TV Marti, basically. Radio Free Asia. This is the Middle East Broadcasting Network. And then we have something here, the Open Technology Fund. So the Open Technology Fund is actually our effort to hack China's Great Firewall. That's what this really is. Okay? So we are trying to hack their Great Firewall so we can pump our propaganda into them, into their country. So this is where we see the intermixing of tech as an industry, right? They set up the Great Firewall. It helps protect their tech industry. It fosters the development of their tech industry. And also the crossover with information control. They also are able to keep out a lot of American bullshit propaganda. Not all of it. You see Radio Free Asia trash pop up all over their blogs and things like that sometimes. Not all of it, but it is able to keep out a little bit, right? So yeah, the Open Technology Fund is literally our effort to make it so that places like China cannot have digital sovereignty. That is what we are trying to do with this. And that's not how we put forward what it is, but we do. We do. And you know, when you're talking to a liberal about what's going on in the world today, and they're like, oh, but look at all these bad things that the communists are doing, and look at my sources, you know, let's think about that while we read through this Open Technology Fund and what they're trying to do. So OTF funds internet freedom technology at every stage of the development cycle, from proof of concept to on-the-ground deployments to multi-year efforts. What does this mean? What does the United States mean when it says freedom? Free markets. This approach ensures that USAGM journalists and audiences have the tools they need right now to safely access the uncensored internet. All right, so they are specifically coming for freedom technologies for unfree market countries, communist countries, to basically be able to pump them in with propaganda. Uncensored internet in communist countries, right? This is the USAGM website that we're on right now, and it has all of them right here. So while investing in innovative solutions to stay ahead of evolving censorship threats, in order to provide comprehensive support to internet freedom projects, OTF provides resources through a variety of implementation mechanisms. Direct funds. They provide funding to support the research, development, implementation, and sustainability of technologies that enable censorship circumvention. We give people money if they are trying to hack systems to let us pump propaganda into communist countries. Okay, so that's what this means. Labs. OTF provides expert services through its labs, including the translation of internet freedom tools into over 200 languages, security audits, usability assessments, legal supports, etc. More ways to ensure that our bullshit propaganda from the USAGM, which is again a propaganda network, can be pumped into countries that are trying to actively prevent it from getting pumped in there. Fellowships, network support, rapid response. Impact. Now, this is where it really starts to get interesting, and you're going to see some things that stand out to you. billions of users worldwide. Today, over 2 billion people use OTF-supported technology daily. Support to USAGM networks. That's the U.S. Agency for Global Media. That is our propaganda networks, congressionally funded. OTF works closely with USAGM networks to protect their content online and ensure it is resistant to censorship. So when you're on a blog in China, thank you, Comrade Thuggan, and you see them talking about some Radio Free Asia bullshit, like there's only 18 haircuts allowed in North Korea, it's because of this. This is exactly where that comes from. Right? You can't find, yeah, okay. And this is the OTF. If you look at entities and then go to OTF on the USAGM website, okay? So, for example, when USAGM news sites were abruptly blocked in Pakistan, yeah, because it's a foreign government's propaganda, OTF created mirror sites to ensure USAGM content remained available for key audiences. The fact they're trying to spin this like it's good, they're like bypasscensorship.org. This is literally a tool of foreign subversion trying to overthrow sovereign countries. We are using the USAGM to try to overthrow other countries' governments. And they're like, no, thank you. And we're like, wow, censored. Right? The way they're trying to spin this is so fucking gross, okay? So here, let's get into this. Some key names you're going to see. Best-in-class tools. OTF supports anti-censorship, privacy, and security tools that are regularly used and recommended by leading media and human rights organizations. Remember, we always talk about the capitalists are selling you a product that is foreign wars, coups, regime change, imperialism. And if you're a liberal or if you're a conservative, they're going to use a different sales pitch. But at the end of the day, they're still selling you the same shit-ass product. Well, what's the sales pitch they use on liberals? Human rights violations, human rights issues. So that is why this vast network of human rights organizations that the United States maintains, props up, and funds and supports is so essential to this. The human rights organizations are the sales pitch to liberals for whatever fuck-ass shit we want to do in another country. And which ones are they saying that they include here, that they work with? Committee to Protect Journalists, UNESCO, Reporters Without Borders, Human Rights Watch, Freedom House. These are all affiliates of the U.S. government that are complicit and used as propaganda sales pitches to liberals to get them on board with us overthrowing other countries. It's very, very wild. Yeah, you want to regulate your own internet? You want to not allow your country to be overthrown by a foreign power? You're oppressing people. It's absolutely wild. So other things here that will stand out to you. Rapid response. OTF has provided rapid response assistance to individuals and organizations facing digital emergencies in 40 countries, including what? Venezuela, Iran, Azerbaijan. That's a big one. If you listen to our podcast, we just did a bonus episode over on our Patreon about Azerbaijan and Armenia. Azerbaijan is backed by Israel, Turkey, the United States, and the EU. Vietnam, Thailand, Pakistan, Mexico, Uganda, and Tibet. And notice they say Tibet and not China, right? Tibet, specifically. So then here's the last one that we're going to look at here. Exposing repressive Chinese surveillance. OTF's Red Team Lab. You got to make it red. Really teach those fucking commies a lesson. Is investigated and exposed apps used for repressive surveillance throughout China, including tools used by the government to target who? The Uyghur Muslims in Xinjiang. Of course, right? So, OTF is our literal attempt to force other countries to consume our Western CIA garbage bullshit propaganda. That is what they do. And if you set up a firewall to try to keep us out, we're going to hack it, babe. The OTF is getting in there, and we are forcing our fucking garbage down your citizens' throats. We are forcing our U.S. congressionally funded U.S. Agency of Global Media Network propaganda down your citizens' throats no matter what you do. And that's what the OTF is for, okay? So when these countries talk about digital sovereignty, good luck, babe. The Open Technology Fund is there to make sure you don't have control. We have control. We have control over everything. And the fact that we're doing this so out in the open really showcases how cooked Americans are, how ignorant Americans are. It is right there for you to see. And if you told most average Americans that this was happening, they would tell you this was a conspiracy theory and this isn't real, right? Very, very interesting. Very, very interesting. So is every lib talking point in one U.S. government website, official U.S. government website, telling you we're making propaganda about these things. We're doing it, babes. And we do right on the open. And this is, again, how ignorant many, many Americans are. Very interesting. So if the EU decides they want to start having digital sovereignty, what if they start creating firewalls, for example, to keep out American tech? Do you think the United States is going to be happy about that? Right? What if they stop aligning themselves with the United States because we want to do shit like take over Greenland? Right? How soon until you start thinking that we're going to see things about EU censorship popping up on here? I think it's going to be soon. Now, the US AGM is born out of a long-standing tradition of the US government controlling the media, controlling narratives, and creating propaganda. Radio Free Asia, which is a US AGM network. Last time I clicked on this, it didn't work. It was a critical error. They got defunded, I think, by Trump. But whatever the case, Radio Free Asia was started by the CIA as part of a CIA disinformation campaign. Radio Free Europe, Radio Liberty, similarly. Also, or do they still exist? Yeah, they still exist here. Oh, it's just, they just have a broken link on their website. Yeah, it's just a broken link on their website. But Radio Free Asia's website's still up. This is the Radio Free Asia website. It's still up. They just have a broken link on here. So all of these things were started by the CIA, and then they got successful as CIA operations, and then they were absorbed into the official U.S. Agency for Global Media, which is our official propaganda arm, so that their funding came directly from Congress rather than going through the CIA and becoming part of the CIA fund. So that's kind of how that process goes. CIA creates a propaganda network. It's big enough that it now needs to be whitewashed and legitimized in order for it to continue to function. So then they sanitize it and launder it through the U.S. Agency for Global Media. Now it becomes an official part of it, and then its funding gets congressionally allocated, and it is no longer affiliated with the CIA, and then the CIA is able to start something newer and smaller, and that's kind of the life cycle of a propaganda network, if that makes sense. Oogie Dougie Doug, bye. So, yeah, that's kind of this process. So when we look at the CIA on the media over here, it is a really long article. It is 11:32. We don't have a ton of time, but we'll do a little bit of it today. I really recommend you guys read this article. Even though it's from the 1970s, this is still the process that's being used today by the CIA. So I think it's important. So let's start off. This is going to be how we end today's stream. I love this piece, though. I recommend everybody interested in left-wing politics, even if they're like, I'm a liberal, I'm progressive, I'm a leftist. I'm like, read this piece. Read this piece. This is what I recommend to everybody. So I'm really excited. We're going to read a little bit of this. Why is there 2 articles going on here? Okay, this is just a breakaway text. Okay. So we're going to start with this. Working press CIA style. To understand the role of most journalist operatives, it's necessary to dismiss some myths about undercover work for American intelligence services. Few American agents are spies in the popularly accepted sense of the term. Spying, the acquisition of secrets from a foreign government, is almost always done by foreign nationals who have been recruited by the CIA and are under CIA control in their own countries. Thus, the primary role of the American working undercover abroad is often to aid the recruitment and handling of foreign nationals who are channels of secret information reaching American intelligence. Many journalists were used by the CIA to assist in this process, and they had the reputation of being among the best in the business. The peculiar nature of the job of the foreign correspondent is ideal for such work. Yeah, this link it's in my link tree always. If you want to find it later, it is in my entry level reading list recommendations. But I'll send it here too. I'll put it here as a tiny URL. Oh, thank you, Kaningsa Pepsu. And again, this is from the 1970s, but remember, everything we just looked at that the US AGM is doing are stated propaganda networks. It's using the same kind of format today, just with digital media. So this is still going to be super relevant to how things work today. So the peculiar nature of the job of a foreign correspondent is ideal for such work. He's accorded unusual access by his host country, permitted to travel in areas often off limits to other Americans, spends much of his time cultivating sources in governments, academic institutions, the military establishments, and the scientific communities. He has the opportunity to form long-term personal relationships with sources and, perhaps more than any other category of American operative, is in a position to make correct judgments about the susceptibility and availability of foreign nationals for recruitment as spies. As a foreigner is recruited, a case officer often has to stay in the background, explained a CIA official, so use a journalist to carry messages to and from both parties. Journalists in the field generally took their assignments in the same manner as any other undercover operative. If, for instance, a journalist was based in Austria, he ordinarily would be under the general direction of the Vienna station chief and report to a case officer. Some particularly roving correspondents or U.S.-based reporters who made frequent trips abroad reported directly to CIA officials in Langley, Virginia. The tasks they performed sometimes consisted of little more than serving as eyes and ears for the CIA, reporting on what they had seen or overheard in an Eastern European factory, at a diplomatic reception in Bonn, or the perimeter of a military base in Portugal. On other occasions, their assignments were more complex, planting subtly concocted pieces of misinformation, hosting parties or receptions designed to bring together American agents and foreign spies, serving up black propaganda to leading foreign journalists at lunch or dinner, providing their hotel rooms or bureau offices as drops for highly sensitive information moving to and from foreign agencies, conveying instructions and dollars to CIA-controlled members of foreign governments. Often the CIA's relationship with a journalist might begin informally with a lunch, a drink, a casual exchange of information. An agency official might then offer a favor, for example, a trip to a country difficult to reach. In return, he would seek nothing more than the opportunity to debrief the reporter afterwards. A few more lunches, a few more favors, and only then might there be a mention of a formal arrangement. That came later, said a CIA official, after you had the journalist on a string. Another official described a typical example of the way accredited journalists, either paid or unpaid by the CIA, might be used in the agency. In return for our giving them information, we'd ask them to do things that fit their roles as journalists, but that they wouldn't have thought of unless we put it in their minds. For instance, a reporter in Vienna would say to our man, "I met an interesting second secretary at the Czech embassy," and we'd say, "Can you get to know him? And after you get to know him, can you assess him? And then, can you put him in touch with us? And would you mind letting us use your apartment?" Formal recruitment of reporters was generally handled at high levels, after the journalist had undergone a thorough background check. The actual approach might even be made by deputy director or division chief. On some occasions, no discussion would be entered until the journalist had signed a pledge of secrecy. The secret agreement was sort of the ritual that got you into the tabernacle, said a former assistant to the director of Central Intelligence. After that, you had to play by the rules. David Atlee Phillips, former Western Hemisphere chief of clandestine services and former journalist himself, estimated in an interview that at least 200 journalists signed secrecy agreements or employment contracts with the agency in the past 25 years. Remember, this was written in 1977, so from 1950 to 1977. Phillips, who owned a small English-language newspaper in Santiago, Chile, when he was recruited by the CIA in 1950, described the approach. Somebody from the agency says, "I want you to help me. I know you are a true blue American, but I want you to sign a piece of paper before I tell you what it's about." I didn't hesitate to sign, and a lot of newsmen didn't hesitate over the next 20 years. So really the only big differences here, again, when we talk about this, is that a lot of media is technology-based. It's online, it's digital, and also they have the National Endowment for Democracy now to do things more above board as well. So that's important to remember. So they're talking about all of this. This is this little breakaway on the right. We're not going to have time to read this whole article. It is a long article, and it was published in Rolling Stone, back when Rolling Stone used to do more investigative work. You guys know the famous Frost-Nixon thing. What was it? God, why can't I think of what it's called? Deep Throat. Watergate. Watergate broke in Rolling Stone. So Rolling Stone used to be the go-to place for investigative journalism. And Carl Bernstein's a very, very well-respected journalist who wrote in here. So we're going to read a little bit of it. We're not going to be able to get through the whole thing, but I do really recommend you read it. Yeah, Deep Throat was the code name of the guy who leaked the Watergate story. Haven't you guys ever seen the movie Dick from the 90s? It's a great movie. But you don't know this? Wait. It's like a joke movie about Watergate. And first of all, the outfits are amazing. This is what the outfits look like. It's very, very good. And it is not historically accurate too much, but it is a little bit. And I really recommend you watch Dick. It might have, I thought it was Rolling Stone, actually. Let me double check. I'm going to check myself. Okay, So, all right, you were right. It was Washington Post. This is why I thought this, though. Carl Bernstein broke the story, and he used to write at Washington Post. So Carl Bernstein is the one who broke the Watergate story, and he worked at the Washington Post in 1977. He left and came to Rolling Stone. So this is the guy who broke the story, but he broke it in Washington Post, not Rolling Stone. So thank you. Thank you for that correction. Yes. Yes. Chat born in 2005. That's okay. I will give you all the 90s and early 2000s gems. Watch the movie Dick. It is very fucking funny. It is not super historically accurate, but it is very, very enjoyable, and you will like the movie, and the outfits are great. No, thank you for that correction. So this article is literally written by one of the journalists who broke the Watergate story. So he is a very accomplished journalist, but yes, he used to write before Rolling Stone. He wrote in the Washington Post, and that's where he broke that story. All right, so all of your lib friends will have to respect him. If you're like, did you ever read that piece about the CIA and journalists that the Watergate guy broke? You can direct them to this, and that's a good way to do it. In 1953, Joseph Alsop, then one of America's leading syndicated columnists, went to the Philippines to cover an election. He did not go because he was asked to do so by a syndicate. He did not go because he was asked to do so by the newspapers that printed his column. He went at the request of the CIA. Alsop is one of more than 400 American journalists who in the past 25 years have secretly carried out assignments for the CIA, according to documents on file at CIA headquarters. Some of these journalist relationships with the agency were tacit, some were explicit. There was cooperation, accommodation, and overlap. Journalists provided a full range of clandestine services, from simple intelligence gathering to serving as go-betweens with spies in communist countries. Reporters shared their notebooks with the CIA. Editors shared their staffs. Some of the journalists were Pulitzer Prize winners, distinguished reporters who considered themselves ambassadors without portfolio for their country. Most were less exalted, foreign correspondents who found that their association with the agency helped their work, stringers and freelancers who were interested in the daring-do of the spy business, as in filing articles. And the smallest category, full-time CIA employees masquerading as journalists abroad. In many instances, CIA documents show journalists were engaged to perform tasks for the CIA with the consent of the management of America's leading news organizations. The history of the CIA's involvement with the American press continues to be shrouded by an official policy of obfuscation and deception for the following principal reasons. The use of journalists has been among the most productive means of intelligence gathering employed by the CIA. Although the agency has cut back sharply on the use of reporters since 1973, primarily as a result of pressure from the media, some journalist operatives are still posted abroad. Further investigation into the matter, CIA officials would say, inevitably reveals a series of embarrassing relationships in the 1950s and 60s with some of the most powerful organizations and individuals in American journalism. Among the executives who lent their cooperation to the agency were William Paley of the Columbia Broadcasting System, Henry Luce of Tiern Inc., Arthur Hayes Sulzberger of the New York Times, Barry Bingham Sr. of the Louisville Courier-Journal, and James Copley of the Copley News Service. Other organizations which cooperated with the CIA include ABC, NBC, AP, Associated Press, United Press International, Reuters, Hearst Newspapers, Scripps Howard, Newsweek Magazine, the Mutual Broadcasting System, the Miami Herald, and the Old Saturday Evening Post and New York Herald Tribune. By far the most valuable of those associations, according to CIA officials, has been with the New York Times, CBS, and Time Magazine. The CIA's use of the American news media has been much more extensive than agency officials have acknowledged publicly or in closed sessions with members of Congress. The general outlines of what happened are indisputable. The specifics are harder to come by. CIA sources hint that a particular journalist was trafficking all over Eastern Europe for the agency. The journalist says, "No, I just had lunch with the station chief." CIA sources say flatly that a well-known ABC correspondent worked for the agency through 1973, but they refuse to identify him. A high-level CIA official with a prodigious memory says that the New York Times provided cover for about 10 CIA operatives between 1950 and 1966. He does not know who they were or who in the newspaper's management made the arrangements. The agency's special relationship with the so-called majors in publishing and broadcasting enabled the CIA to post some of its most valuable operatives abroad without exposure for more than 2 decades. In most instances, agency files show officials at the highest levels of the CIA, usually director or deputy director, dealt personally with a single designated individual in the top management of the cooperating news organization. The aid furnished often took 2 forms, providing jobs and credentials, journalistic cover in agency parlance, for CIA operatives about to be posted in foreign capitals, and lending the agency the undercover services of reporters already on staff, including some of the best-known correspondents in the business. In the field, journalists were used to help recruit and handle foreigners as agents, to acquire and evaluate information, and to plant false information with officials of foreign governments. Many signed secrecy agreements pledging never to divulge anything about their dealings with the agency. Some signed employment contracts. Some were assigned case officers and treated with unusual deference. Others had less structured relationships with the agency, even though they performed similar tasks. They were briefed by CIA personnel before trips abroad, debriefed afterwards, and used as intermediaries with foreign agents. Appropriately, the CIA uses the term reporting to describe much of what was corresponding journalists did for the agency. We would ask them, "Will you do us a favor?" said a senior CIA official. "We understand you're going to be in Yugoslavia. Have they paved all the streets? What planes did you see? Were there any signs of military presence? How many Soviets were there? If you happen to meet a Soviet, can you get his name and spell it right? Can you set up a meeting for us or relay a message?" Many CIA officials regarded these helpful journalists as operatives. The journalists tended to see themselves as trusted friends of the agency who performed occasional favors, usually without pay, in national interest. "I'm proud they asked me. I'm proud to have done it," said Joseph Alsop, who, like his late brother columnist Stuart Alsop, undertook clandestine tasks for the agency. "The notion that a newspaper man doesn't have a duty to his country is perfect balls." I love this phrasing. I didn't think that saying things were balls came about until like Y2K era. I had no idea. Wait, are you guys still here? Did I lose you in stream? Are you there? Are you there? Yeah? No? Okay, good. You're just quiet. The chat is quiet. Are you riveted? Is that why? Is the chat quiet because it's riveting? Okay, good. All right, good. Yay! Okay, I like to hear that. I like it. I like it. Okay, lock in. Lock in. Okay, I only got a few more minutes. From the agency's perspective, there is nothing untoward in such relationships, and any ethical questions are a matter for the journalistic profession to resolve, not the intelligence community. Oh no, my partner just got home early from work and Fork's losing it. We might have to cut it off here, chat. It might be time. Okay, well, if I got you hooked on this piece, please read the piece. Fork's yelling, partner's home, I'm over schedule, it's chaos. It's time to end the stream. It's time to end the stream. So I'm going to raid Leaping Larry again. I'm going to get you guys all out of here. Fork's losing it. Everyone's overstimulated. Perfect way to end it. And I'll see you guys Monday.
Well?
Hold on. You're still on stream. Hold on.